On today's Two on Your Side Town Hall, legal perspective on the breaking news. A judge had blocked New York State's mask mandate, but then a short time ago, a higher court temporarily blocking that ruling. We're going to look at the impact on schools, local rules, and where it all goes from here. Plus, the Verify team tackling a question that's been flooding the inbox lately, having to do with vaccines and blood donations. And help wanted at the polls. There is a big push to get more workers to handle voting in New York. We're going to have questions for the State Board of Elections. That live conversation a little bit later. Good evening, everybody. Just after we got off the air last night, word from a courtroom in Nassau County on Long Island that a judge had struck down New York State's mask mandate, saying it was unconstitutional and illegal. Some lamented that, others cheered, but it turns out that was not the end of the story. We have a two-page ruling from within the past hour, an appellate court temporarily blocking that other judge's decision. Now, there are a lot of questions here, including the effect on the local mask mandate in Erie County. Also, what should parents know about masks in schools? And how is this appeals process going to play out? Basically, we want to try to explain what this means practically for everybody watching. So joining us live is Leslie Silva, an attorney and partner at the Tully Rinke law firm. Leslie, it is great to have you back on. This is the two-page decision that we got a short time ago from the appellate division, basically putting a temporary pause on what this judge in Nassau County had decided last night. We hear the word stay, we hear appellate judge, state Supreme Court. Can you walk us through what happened and what's happening now for people watching?
Sure. Well, a lot has happened in the past 24 hours. We saw a decision out of Nassau County saying that the mask mandate was unconstitutional. The state filed a notice of appeal immediately, which did trigger a short-term automatic stay. But that stay doesn't last forever. So then they filed their motion for that extended stay while they proceed with their appeal. And that's what we see granted from the Second Department Appellate Division this evening.
And before we go into the next question, Leslie, it looks like this is going to go before the appellate division on Friday. The document says January 28th at 10 o'clock in the morning. So at that point, how does that process play out? The two sides come in and make their case to this appellate judge or to a panel of judges?
They should be making their case to a panel of judges. It is a panel that each appellate division has, and they'll be making their oral arguments. Hopefully they'll also be able to submit their memorandums and briefs in time. It's a few short days, so it's a time crunch for them.
Let me ask you about schools, because there was a previous separate state Supreme Court judge in Albany County who had upheld the mandate for masks in schools. And then we get this decision last night, the judge saying that the mask in schools, just like masks everywhere else, that mandate was illegal. There were some politicians, putting tweets out today saying the mask mandate is not in effect. Don't send your kids to school with masks. I know right now the mandate is still in effect for everybody, but in terms of schools, how did that actually play out? What happens when one judge at state Supreme Court says one thing and then another one says the other?
So the heart of that issue is that the mask mandates that have been issued throughout the course of this pandemic have been based on different laws. And the mask mandate that was most recently put into effect, that law is being challenged now that we're seeing today within the appellate division. If your county has a separate mandate or their own mandate, and they have not just deferred to the state, then you follow your county mandate. Your county is operating under a different set of laws to police public health, and we know that they have the authority to do that. And this stay will allow counties to develop a mandate if they need to.
I want to pick up exactly on that. Here in Erie County, we had a mask mandate that was issued before the governor did one statewide. I want to share a quote that we got earlier today from Erie County's county executive, basically saying that all local orders, including Erie County's, are still valid because they were issued under a different section of New York's executive law. You kind of just touched on that. I think legally you agree with the county executive, but people are kind of watching that and wondering, well, if the state Supreme Court judge in Nassau County said that these mask mandates are unconstitutional, help them make sense of why the local ones would still be in effect.
Sure. The local mandates that are put in place under the public health law, they have that authority through the state constitution, through their policing powers. That's inherent and it's already been established. What happened in Nassau County was a challenge to the governor's authority to give the State Department of Health the authority to regulate itself. Now, that seems a little uneasy because we are skipping the legislature. I do understand the judge's piece of the argument there. However, she did declare a state of emergency and she has some executive powers. So it's not as clear cut whether or not she can do this in this current state of emergency, how she did it. But the local governments, your local county Department of Health, they can go ahead and make those local mandates.
Essentially, someone would have to sue Erie County and Mark Poloncarz and challenge that. It's just not covered by the challenge to the state mandate. That's
right. And they would be unsuccessful. There's a lot of case law that tells us that the local departments of health have this authority.
Finally, I want to put you on the spot a little bit, if you can. I mean, you know the argument here from the governor. She says, look, the state of emergency, she's trying to protect people. She also noted that the legislature wasn't in session when the mask mandate was instituted, and that the health department kind of has the power to do this. You know the other side of the argument and what the judge in Nassau County said yesterday. How do you think the appellate division is going to come out on this? And a lot of people are wondering, weren't the vast majority of these appellate judges appointed by former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who was in office for more than a decade? How do you think that factors in, and how do you think the appellate division is going to rule on this ultimately?
Well, ultimately, they have a tough question to decide. Whether or not the governor overstepped her authority is really something that they need to carefully decide. It's not something that I think they're taking lightly. I think there's exactly what you just presented is going to be the question that they're deciding. They have a huge public interest. They have a pandemic. They need and want to protect children, especially in a school setting. And they have a public policy argument that they are going to hear as well. But the authorization, the constitutional authorization, may or may not trump that. I'm not really sure where they're going to go with this, but wherever they do go, I hope that it gives people some clarity on how to move forward. Because like you said earlier, no one really knew what to do today. We had questions from clients. Do I send my child to school in a mask, or do I not have to send my child to school in a mask? And we need to end the confusion. We need to get some real answers.
That is what I think can unify all of us and that we can all agree on, is that we need a decision and we need to get rid of all the confusion. But just for everyone watching right now, again, this is the 2-page ruling from within the past hour. There is a stay on this judge's ruling from yesterday. So the statewide mask mandate, there's no question right now it is in effect. We'll continue to follow it as this proceeds. Leslie Silva is an attorney and partner at Tully Rinke. Thanks so much for coming on. This has been a story that's been changing all day long, and your clarity is appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, let's turn right now to a question for the Verify team regarding blood donations during this pandemic. Someone in the U.S. needs a blood donation every 2 seconds, and the Red Cross says it is facing the worst shortage in a decade. But the Verify team has been getting questions about how vaccinations affect the blood that's being donated and then ultimately used. Adiane Day-Till now with a verified answer on that.
After Verify reported that both vaccinated and unvaccinated people can donate blood, we received a lot more questions about blood donations during the pandemic. 2 of the most popular are, do blood donation centers sort blood by vaccination status, and are blood donation centers making sure they don't put vaccinated blood in someone who doesn't want to be vaccinated? To answer those questions, we spoke to Dr. Yvette Miller, Executive Medical Officer for the American Red Cross, Kate Fry, CEO at America's Blood Centers, and Anahita Dua, vascular surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. Both questions revolve around the idea that vaccines are present in your blood and can be passed from person to person through a blood transfusion. But that's not true. According to vascular surgeon Anahita Dua, quote, only the antibodies generated by the individual to the vaccine are in the blood, unquote. That's the same for all vaccinations, not just COVID-19. So let's tackle the first question. Do blood donation centers sort blood by vaccination status? Miller says no.
We don't separate blood into vaccinated and unvaccinated, and I don't think any blood collection organization in this country does that.
And Fry agrees, adding, quote, blood donations are not classified by a donor's vaccination status, given the absence of risk for transmitting COVID-19 or possible vaccine side effects, unquote. Question 2. Are blood donation centers making sure they don't put vaccinated blood in someone who doesn't want to be vaccinated? First, blood donation centers don't give blood transfusions. Hospitals and treatment centers do. Since we verified that blood donation centers don't separate blood by vaccination status, hospitals just don't have that information. So the answer to this question is also no.
That's not possible. We don't label the blood with the donor's vaccination status.
Kate Fry, CEO at America's Blood Centers, says if an unvaccinated person receives blood from someone who is vaccinated, they aren't considered vaccinated, nor are they at risk of experiencing any vaccine-related side effects. With your Verify, I'm Ariane Till.